Years ago, I dated a spiritual teacher who was really good at pretending to be on a real spiritual awakening journey, a real healing journey. He was so good at appearing to be this conscious man in public. He knew all the buzzwords. He even railed against spiritual bypassing, which is something that a lot of fake teachers do. But he really had the appearance that he was on a healing journey and like doing his own work for real. But behind closed doors, he was actually the opposite. He was a true wolf in sheep's clothing. Since I'd first come to him as a student, he was the teacher. He actually did help me to heal some of my own wounds. He helped me work through some things. And so I put him on this pedestal and saw him as someone who could help me and support me. But when it came to his own healing, it was all talk, no action. He really wasn't doing anything. He was narcissistic, he was abusive, and the only real work that he was doing was getting his ego stroked by all of his followers and clients. Being in a relationship with him was a nightmare. And I actually stayed with him so long because there were so many spiritual synchronicities and experiences that I was having while in relationship with him. And they were so profound that it made me overlook a lot of the red flags that were going on. At the time, I was really into my spiritual awakening journey. And so I was having these experiences and seeing all these things happening and thinking that this was the universe's way of telling me that I was in the right relationship. Like, this is who I was supposed to be with. Like, for example, the first time we had a video chat because we met online, my room started smelling like a florist. Like, all of a sudden, there was an intense smell of flowers everywhere, and there were no flowers in my room whatsoever. Then, for 3 months, I actually think it went on even longer after we first met, I would hear this one song on the radio that kept saying his name over and over again. And I'd heard that song before, but I had never heard it as frequently as I did when I was with this person or just talking to this person. It was incredible. It was like every time I turned on the radio, this song would be playing. And I thought it was another sign. Another time, we were sitting on the couch in our apartment. This is after we had moved in together. And we were watching my ex's favorite meditation teacher. We were just watching a video about it. And all of a sudden, we both at the same time experienced this dissolution of our ego where we felt really bad for a second and then boom, we felt like we were completely immersed in unconditional love. And we sat there for a couple hours just in this feeling of bliss and peace. It was amazing. It felt like we had dove into true love together. And this actually happened a couple times. It wasn't even just this once. There was another time when this happened too. So I was having all of these profound spiritual experiences and thinking, well, it must be meant to be. That's what all of this must mean. And still to this day, these were some of the most profound spiritual experiences that I've ever had. Not the most. Self-realization was the most for me. But these are up there. And so I'm not talking about like just little minor things. Like, these were really intense experiences for me. So intense that I continued to overlook the abuse, to overlook being mistreated. Now, at the time that this was happening, I didn't know it was abuse, but I knew that I wasn't happy. I knew that I wasn't feeling good. I knew that something wasn't right here. I thought all of that stuff had to mean something. But what I eventually realized later, after meeting a genuine spiritual teacher, was that no, these were just experiences that I had. Because this person was abusive, because he couldn't truly love me, it did not mean that we were supposed to be together. They were just spiritual experiences that I was having. They weren't signs that I was supposed to be with this person. They weren't lessons I had to learn. None of that. They really were ultimately meaningless. So how can you avoid an experience like I went through? How can you tell the difference between someone who is really going on a healing and awakening journey versus someone who's faking it? How can you tell the difference between someone who's authentically healing and doing the work and a spiritual narcissist like my ex? That's what I'm diving into today. So what does a fake healing journey look like? And disclaimer here, I don't really like to judge people's healing journeys. Healing is healing. If you're doing something that is helping you to feel better, I would consider that a healing journey. I'm not judging it. Really what the purpose of this video is for is to help you to see when someone is really actually using the healing world's terms to prop up their ego or to gain followers, basically a spiritual narcissist. So the first indicator that someone isn't really on a true healing journey, they're not really doing their work, is if they judge negative emotions as bad. And I do this in quotes because there are truly no negative emotions. But if you're talking to someone who is telling you that there are, that's probably an indication that their healing or their awakening, it's not complete, it's not authentic. Because while it's true that there are very uncomfortable emotions, if you're on a true healing and awakening journey, you know that you have to embrace all of your emotions. You have to allow the sadness to be there. You have to allow the fear, the pain, the grief, whatever it is you're going through, you have to accept it and feel it so that it can move through you and be released. And that's how you truly heal. You allow yourself to feel. So someone who is actively judging those emotions is not really healing. This is where you would fall into the toxic positivity. That's what all this stuff is. So for example, my ex, I'm going to have a lot of examples of my ex here. My ex would hate to feel anything other than happiness or joy or something what he would quote as positive. Now, again, like nobody likes to feel sad or some of these other uncomfortable emotions, but he would try so hard to avoid feeling anything. Like as soon as he felt a hint of whatever it was, sadness, shame, guilt, he would do all of these mental manipulations to try to get out of feeling that. Like he would work really hard to not feel that emotion. Like he would try to shift his beliefs, which is different from the work that I do. When I'm shifting beliefs, we're going into the subconscious, we're going to the root of what happened, and we're looking at it differently. This is not what he was doing. This was all in his conscious mind. He was trying to do all of these mental manipulations to get out of feeling an emotion. So if you're with someone who is judging their negative emotions, and again, negative in quotes, or your own, that's an indication that this is probably not someone who's going on an authentic healing journey. Another indication that someone might be on a fake healing journey is if they are abusive. So if someone is abusive, they are not on a real healing journey. Those two things actually don't go together. Because if you're on a real healing journey, if you're really doing your work, you hold yourself accountable. You do the best you can to treat other people well, within reason, as long as you're still feeling safe within your own boundaries. But again, someone who is abusive does not equal being on a healing journey. Now, the minute that someone who is abusive stops being abusive and does start to do the work, we can say, okay, yes, then they are on a genuine healing journey. If they are taking accountability, if they are doing the best they can to break those patterns and to not be abusive, yes, they can be on a real healing journey. But before that's happening, you cannot be abusive and be on a true healing and awakening journey. It just doesn't work like that. Being abusive is really the definition of being unconscious. Because usually people who are abusive, not all the time, but usually people who are abusive are not conscious of why they're doing it, what their purpose is. They just do it. And so to really be on a healing journey, you have to start to become conscious of your own motivations. Another indicator that someone is on an inauthentic healing journey or a fake healing journey is if they use the phenomenon of projection or the idea that life is a mirror to excuse their behavior. So another example from my ex is he would see that I was hurt and he would say that the reason that he was hurting me, the reason he was acting that way was because of me. It must be something within me. It must be that I am projecting this reality onto him. Basically saying, that we create all of our experiences internally. So it's me that is causing him to hurt me. It's not his fault at all. He has no accountability. He's just being himself. And when he's interacting with me, he's hurting me, and that's because it's me. Now, if you didn't follow that, yeah, it's crazy. It doesn't really make sense. But this is what he would say to me was the cause of his mistreatment of me. He would also blame me for responding in a way that was scared. He would blame me for being hurt or upset. He would always say that I was misperceiving him, that he wasn't doing anything wrong, that it was just me who didn't understand him. I didn't understand his intentions. I didn't understand where he was coming from when he was being abusive. Now, he didn't say that. He didn't say when I'm being abusive, but this is what was happening. He would always say that my ego was in the way. I wasn't seeing him clearly. I wasn't seeing his pure, loving intentions when I was feeling hurt by him. He then used that as a reason to abuse me more, and he would say hurtful things and make jokes about me having some emotions towards him, about having some feelings about the way that he was treating me. So he frequently used the idea that life is a mirror or that we are creating our reality to blame me for his abuse. If he was judging me, it was in his mind, he would tell me, that it was because I was judgmental and I was attracting judgmental people. He was just living his life. I was creating the reality of him being judgmental towards me. It was a real mind fuck. It was just like crazy making. It might be hard to understand why I was so deep into this at this point that I didn't see what was going on. But really, I was, again, having all of these intense spiritual experiences, and I saw him as a teacher who knew more than me. He actually didn't, but that's how I saw him at the time. And so, yeah, my reality was already shifting because of the spiritual awakening that I was going through. And so everything was really, it wasn't as clear as it used to be in the past, where everything was just black and white for me. I was seeing things differently. And so my mind was very open. I was also very suggestible. And so my teacher at the time, would come in and tell me something, and I would be open to it. I may not have always agreed with it. It didn't always make sense to me, but I was like, okay, maybe, because there's so much of these spiritual teachings out there. There's a whole world of teachings about law of attraction, about how life is a mirror. So it kind of made sense to me because a lot of other people were talking about it. So another sign that someone is on a fake healing journey is if they are unable or unwilling or just don't ever take accountability for their actions. So another example from my ex is he used to blame me. He blamed me for everything. It was always my fault. You can kind of see a pattern here. But he would blame me for having no boundaries as the reason why he was hurting me. He would say to me, well, if you had better boundaries, I would treat you better. Now, we can kind of see maybe some truth in his argument. Yes, if I had better boundaries at that time, I would have left that relationship a long time ago. But what he was saying is, well, it's you. It's always you. It's not me. I'm just doing my thing. I can't help it. Because you don't have better boundaries, I don't treat you better. Which is never the case. You are never responsible for someone else's abusive behavior towards you. Never. You are not in control of what someone else does. So if anyone is telling you that, if someone is blaming you for their behavior, that is an inauthentic spiritual awakening healing journey. Another sign that someone isn't actually doing the work, they're not on a real healing journey, is if their actions don't match their words. So for example, if you're talking to someone and they're telling you, yeah, I really respect women. I am a big proponent of equal rights. I'm totally a feminist. But their actions say otherwise. Maybe they demean the women in their lives. Maybe they don't treat them well. If something is feeling off, that's an indicator that, yeah, you know what? Something is actually really off. Trust your gut on this one. If someone's words are not matching up to their actions, then they're probably not really doing the work. So the last sign that I'm going to share with you here today that someone probably isn't really on a healing journey, they're not really doing the work, is if they're constantly telling you how good of a person they are, how kind they are, how enlightened or awakened they are, that's a really huge red flag. Because what's usually happening there is somebody is likely trying to manipulate you. You might not actually be thinking that they're a good, kind, enlightened person, whatever they're telling you, and they're trying to convince you otherwise. They're most likely trying to get you to ignore your own feelings or your own gut instincts about them. Someone who is truly awakened, truly enlightened, they're never going to tell you. You would never know unless they're teaching you, then they would have to tell you, or unless you've asked them. You would just think, oh, this is like a really kind, peaceful person. They're very loving, they're very peaceful. You would never know. So anyone who makes these grand proclamations, these announcements of how enlightened or awakened they are, they're most likely trying to manipulate you. Unless, disclaimer here, unless they're a teacher. If they're a teacher, they have to say that. Other than that, they won't be talking about it. So, that's all of the fake healing journey stuff. How can you tell if someone is really on a healing journey? Like they're really doing the work, they're really moving towards becoming conscious or awakened, whatever the word is you want to use. The first sign is that you can actually see them changing. So when someone is not on a real healing journey, they're going to just talk, and you're not going to see any change in their behavior, how they treat people, how they treat themselves. But someone who really is, you will see those changes. You will see their growth. You'll see maybe not a huge change on a day-to-day basis, but slowly over time, you will see them healing and you will see them growing. If they hurt you, they'll do their best to modify their behavior. They'll apologize and they'll do their best to treat you differently next time. Just like you would, because if you're watching this, it's likely that you are also on a genuine healing and awakening journey, and that's what you would do. Another sign that they're really on a healing journey is that they are actually really doing the work, meaning they're going to therapy, they're working with a coach, they're working with a healer, they're going to seminars, retreats, whatever it is, they're doing something to further their healing. Now, this isn't a guarantee, but it's a really good sign. It means, okay, this is someone who isn't just talking about it, they're actually trying to put things into action. They're taking action steps. Another sign that their healing journey is real is the opposite of a fake healing journey where they don't take accountability. If they're really on a healing journey, they can take accountability. They own their stuff. They can be self-aware. They can say, ooh, yeah, you know what? I made that mistake. I did that. I'm so sorry. I'm going to do better next time. Because none of us are perfect out there. Every one of us out there is going to make a mistake. We're going to mess up sometimes. The real test of someone's consciousness, we could say, or awareness is if they can own it. Maybe not immediately. Maybe you can't own it instantly in that second that it happens. But when you think about it, you can say, oh yeah, I did do that, and I'm sorry. That's the sign of someone who is really conscious. And another sign that someone's really on a healing journey is they can apologize and treat you better the next time. My abusive narcissistic ex would never apologize, never. And so that's a sign that he's not really on a healing journey. When someone really is, it goes hand in hand with accountability. They can own their stuff and they can apologize and try to do better the next time. Another sign that someone is really on a healing journey is if their actions do match their words. So for example, if someone is saying to you, communication is really important to me, I really value communication, you then see them valuing communication, meaning they're putting in an effort to talk to you when there's a conflict, they're making sure that you're hearing them, that they're hearing you, vice versa. They're putting in the effort when they say that it's important to them. If someone says they value communication, but then gives you the silent treatment, that would be an indicator that they're not on an authentic healing journey. Another positive sign that someone is truly on a real healing journey is if you can resolve conflict with them. Now, in any relationship with any person, whether it's romantic, friend relationships, there's going to be conflict. With someone who is truly healing, you're going to eventually be able to resolve it with them. You can talk to them about it. They're open to hearing your perspective. and you're open to hearing theirs too. That's someone who's really doing the work, who can resolve something with you. If they're not able to do that, then they're probably not really on a healing journey. Now, all of these things that I'm sharing here, this doesn't mean that someone has to be perfect at them right away to be considered on a true healing journey. Again, I'm not trying to judge anyone's healing experience here. What the purpose of this video is for is to give you some indicators of when someone is what I call a spiritual narcissist, meaning someone is narcissistic and just using the terms of an authentic healing journey for their own purposes. Again, whether it's like to manipulate you, to gain followers, to become well-known, whatever it is. So to sum this all up here, if the majority of the time that you're with this person, you don't feel good, then they're probably not really on an authentic healing journey. If you want to learn what else makes a relationship healthy, click here, I have a video for you, and click here to subscribe. I come out with new videos every week. And also follow me on Instagram at Living Free Finding Love for daily updates and tips on how to heal and break the toxic relationship cycle.